You're listening to the Daily Sales Tips podcast, and I'm your host, Scott Ingram. Today's tip comes in the form of a clip from the most recent Sales Success Stories episode that just released today, featuring Alexine Mudawar. Alexine is the company high achiever at Displayer in her role as a major account executive. Here she is.
I'm very organized. There's never any question about what I'm working on. I've never once had a manager ask me to prospect more or check in on my prospecting or whatever. I mean, that's not been a conversation that's come up much. So I'm very, very much self-managing, and that's feedback that I get a lot. On the other side of that, I also have the entrepreneurial brain. So I will see things, problems or issues in the sales process, which sounds great, but I also will kind of like escalate those sometimes. I'm like, here's this thing, like, how can we fix this? And like, can we think of a solution? So in some ways it's good because I'm usually able to identify things that are actually issues, but then some managers don't like that either. Like sometimes people want to kind of stay status quo. So for some managers who like having a rep who is really organized, who is diligent and can come up with creative ideas, that's great. But I think that's part of the reason I focused on startups is that is where my niche is, because they like that it's someone that can kind of self-manage and self-handle their book of business and help some of the other reps kind of figure out their stuff. And then they like that you can also be a resource to help them identify some of these problems. Whereas like a large company, they're going to be like, all right, thanks for letting us know, it's not going to have as much impact. So for me, that's why I focus specifically on startups and smaller organizations.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'm curious about how do you manage your manager relationship? What is that dynamic?
Super transparent. Like, I think what's really important, and this took me years to realize, I think as soon as you get a new manager, whether you change companies or internally, if you get a new manager, the very first conversation that I think you should have is like super, like cards on the table. How do you like to communicate? Here's how I like to communicate. And it's like everything down to like, do you prefer Slack or text? Like I used to have a manager that would text all the time and it was like giving me anxiety. I was like, stop texting me on Saturdays about deals. It's things like that. How do you prefer to communicate? And then talking about motivators, like how does, for your manager, like what is your role? What are some of your goals? Like learning about what they're actually trying to do is really important too. And as salespeople, we never do that. But then also like, here are my motivators, because what I want to shake up really quickly, especially if it's a new manager, is I am not motivated. Money is not my number one motivator. Success is. And then money comes with success. So that's just a side effect of me being successful. So for me, and I've said this in every single interview I've been in, if you were to hold President's Club Award in front of me in a $10,000 check, I would take the President's Club Award every single time because I'm already going to get the $10,000 check. So I'm not even thinking about it. But I think that's where these kind of conversations are really important. I want them to understand what makes me tick. And I'm very honest. I'm like, I'm going to be super organized in Salesforce, but I'm also going to think of some ideas sometimes. And sometimes you might think they're interesting and want to escalate them. And sometimes, you can just tell me like, this is too soon, or like, we're not ready for this idea, or thanks for bringing it to me, but no. So I try to just have like a very transparent communication with them.
For another hour and 45 minutes of Alexine, check out episode 113 on the Sales Success Stories podcast. And of course, we'll have a link for you at DailySales.Tips/766 as well. Once you've gotten started on that, be sure to come back tomorrow for another great sales tip. Thanks for listening.